And I've got a series of questions for you about how you conducted the search and the appearance of the car. All right?
Yes, sir.
All right. I'd like to go ahead and start with State's Exhibit 103. And I wondered if you could go ahead and describe this photograph for us.
Yes, sir. This is the trunk of the Sebring with the car parts in it.
Okay. And you said the car parts in it. Could you just kind of generally point with your hands where those are again?
Yeah, this is all part of the car parts.
Okay. And do you know where those car parts came from?
I believe they came from the front of the vehicle.
Okay.
I believe that's like a CV shaft. Has to do with power to the wheels on the front of the vehicle, but I'm not a mechanic.
Okay. And with regards to the license plate, can we see the license plate on the car?
Yes, sir.
And could you read the license plate for us?
4368206.
Okay. Moving around to State's Exhibit 5, what are we looking at here?
That's the front of the vehicle, specifically the driver's side.
Okay. And is this also, again, how the car looked that day when you searched it?
Yes, sir.
And so I guess from that question, is this the bay that we were talking about, the evidence bay that you can do the search in?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I can't help but notice it doesn't have a wheel. Did it have any wheels?
No, I don't think it did, sir.
Okay.
But I wasn't there when they took it from the junkyard. This is the first time I saw it. Was I came into work and was instructed to go down and help Detective O'Leary.
All right.
Right, sir, I'm gonna need you to speak, maybe slide your chair over a little
Yes,
so
ma'am.
that you're speaking into the microphone.
Yes,
because
sorry.
This is recorded and we do need to get your voice. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Before, I also had you to look on the windshield specifically of the car, and we talked a little bit about it. I'd like to switch now to State's Exhibit 4. This particular car, is this the car that the photo that I had you make a comparison of that windshield?
Yes, sir.
All right. And showing State's Exhibit 5 and 4 together, 4 being on the bottom and 5 being on the top, do you remember the letters and the numbers that I had you point to in the top right-hand corner of the windshield?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And do we have those both highlighted here on the screen?
Yes, sir.
And do you remember me asking you the question about the numbers indicated on the lower left-hand sides of the windshields?
Yes, sir.
And do we have those also highlighted here on the screen?
Yes, sir.
So, with regards to this car, we're looking at the same car here between these two photos, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. Working our way around the car, and I'd like to go ahead and kind of move in a counterclockwise fashion from looking at the hood. Moving now around to the driver's side, can you go ahead and point out for us, when you said that there were car parts in the car, show us where those car parts are, and do you recognize any of those parts?
Yes, sir. So the driver's seat, these are car parts, and then the back passenger seat had more car parts in them.
Okay.
And then obviously the floorboard.
And the floorboard as well?
Yes, sir.
Okay. With regards to those car parts, let's go ahead and kind of zoom in, if we would, to the passenger area, to the driver's seat. So zooming in to that same photograph here of State's Exhibit 6. Can you see those car parts a little bit better?
Yes, sir.
I'd like to go directly to one seat and then the other. So if we could start with the driver's seat, looking at State's Exhibit 7, can you point out where some of these parts are that you're talking about?
Sure. Yes, sir. This looks like the bezel, which would go up here where you're looking at your instruments.
Mm-hmm.
These look like some underbody parts, like that might be a suspension component, but again, I'm not 100%, but they're definitely car parts.
Okay. And moving to State's Exhibit 8, if we go into the back seat, right behind the driver's seat, what are we looking at here?
More car parts, sir.
Okay.
This looks like it might be actually an air filter box.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not 100%. And then this looks like it might be a fender well, like up in the inner fender.
Okay. And is it fair to say from seeing here, we don't see a driver's side rear tire as well?
No, sir.
Moving now kind of to the trunk area, if you could, I'd like to go back to State's Exhibit 103. You already identified this photo for us as being that particular trunk of the Chrysler Sebring with the car parts in it. I'd like to, if you could, describe for the jury as we look at specifically State's Exhibit 104, what was the condition of these parts that you were looking at?
Just like that, they looked like old car parts. I mean, I didn't take the car parts out and see if they fit the car, but I assumed that they belonged to the vehicle.
Was there generally, were there any kind of fluids that were coming from any of these parts that you noticed?
Not in the trunk, but there was a liner, so it's hard to say.
Okay.
I feel like the liner would have absorbed it.
What about in other areas of the car?
Yes.
There were?
Yeah, I believe so. Like the passenger seat, I think the right front had like wetness.
Okay. So I really need you to
Yeah,
keep
yes,
your
ma'am.
voice up. It's a big room and everybody needs to hear you.
Yes, ma'am. Sorry.
Thank you.
I believe the right front area had wetness.
Okay. Thank you for that. I'm going to zoom in. Did you help remove these parts from the vehicle to help do the search?
Yes, sir.
Where did they go?
I think we laid out a piece of big parchment paper, like brown, like the same material like a Hannaford's bag, like when you go to the grocery store and you get paper bags.
Yes.
Just a big roll of that. We laid it out, and they go on that roll.
Okay. Did you help or did you watch as the car parts got emptied from the trunk?
I helped, I believe, yeah.
Okay. And I'd like to show you now State's Exhibit 9 zooming in on this portion of State's Exhibit 104 in the back corner. Can you tell if there's any particular of a color that's in that photo?
Color, sir?
Yeah, any color that doesn't look like a car part. And feel free to use the screen or the photograph if you wish.
Are you referencing like the looks kind of light blue?
Look like blue to you?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Once you emptied out the car, were you able to see what that light blue thing was as we look at State's Exhibit 9?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And what was it?
T-shirt.
A T-shirt?
Yes, sir.
Right. Just and with that trunk emptied, excuse me, apologize. With that trunk emptied, were you able to look farther to the back of the trunk?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And from there, what were the different items that you saw?
I think it was all clothing, and then the toothbrush. You can see a little bit of it right there.
Right where?
Right here, sir.
And that's inside that circle?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Were you able to see it? Let's say you can see it here from the photo, I take it, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. Zooming in on State's Exhibit 9, can you show us again where it is that you see it?
Yes, sir. Right here.
Right there?
Yes, sir.
Then showing again State's Exhibit 10. This is the toothbrush that you recovered from that trunk?
Yes, sir.
On that toothbrush, I believe you testified earlier on in direct that it was identified that you logged it in as JMT7, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
I'm going to hand you what's been marked State's Exhibit 66 for identification purposes only. Just go ahead and look at the label and feel the bag. Do you recognize that particular packaging as well as the object inside?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and what is that packaging? How do you recognize the packaging?
It's the brown bag that I placed it into.
And does it have your initials on it, JMT7?
Yes, sir.
At this point, Your Honor, if I'm going to borrow a pair of scissors, I'd like the witness to be able to open the bag. Mr. Tucker, since we are talking about a toothbrush, I wonder if you would be willing
Yes,
to
sir.
put on a pair of gloves for us and be able to open that bag. I noticed that you're going to put it on a second run. Can you please tell the jury why?
So most of the time when you're processing crime scenes, there's a lot of evidence, and you put on a fresh pair of gloves every time you collect the evidence. And if you don't have double gloves, your hands become very sweaty, and it becomes very difficult to put on a fresh pair of gloves. So it's just easier, especially if you're doing blood swabs and things of that nature. But that's how I was always taught, so that's how I do it.
Fair to say, instinct.
Yes, sir.
You can please go ahead and use those scissors to open up.
Do you have a preference on where?
I would say please, you would please go ahead and cut in an area where there isn't a label,
Okay.
maybe on the side. Just large enough for the item. Let me ask you, without taking the item out of the bag, just looking into the bag. Do you recognize what's in there?
Yes, sir.
What do you recognize it to be?
The toothbrush from the vehicle.
Just wanted to ask for the identification of restricted Robert for State 66.
Without objection.
All right, the ID is stricken, and it is entered as a full exhibit.
Mr. Tucker, if you please go ahead and show us the toothbrush. And if I could ask the witness to please stand up. The witness stand up.
For the purpose of,
Just to be able to show with both sides of the toothbrush. I don't know that the jurors in the back are going to be able to see both sides.
Yes, he may do
They
that.
can see the front, but they can't see the back from the photo.
that's fine.
Mr. Tucker, if you'd sit.
A lot of pressure right now, I could trip.
Yeah, do be careful. Step right over here. If you can, please, we can see the front of the toothbrush on the State's Exhibit 9, but I wondered if you would please go ahead and show the toothbrush, both show the front, and then also turn it around and show all the sides slowly so that all of the jurors can see. And if you could please turn it around to the back so that the jurors can see what the back of the toothbrush looks like. Thank you, Mr. Tucker. If you could please retake the stand. Thank you. And Mr. Tucker, let me hold the bag open. If you could go ahead and place that back in there. Hold on just a moment and let's keep that together. That's the only item I'm going to ask you to look at, so I will get a trash can.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Tucker, moving on around the car, out of the trunk now, I'd like to go over towards the passenger side, if we could. We'll start with the rear passenger side. Looking at State's Exhibit 105 here, can you describe what we can see in this photograph?
Yes, sir. More car parts on the seat, and then some trash items, and it's like a water bottle on the passenger side floorboard.
And I see here that we've got a door on this side.
Yes, sir.
All right. And on the previous side, on the driver's side, were there any doors there?
No, sir.
Moving on from this particular one then to State's 106, could you please describe what we're seeing here and what part of the car?
It's the right front, the passenger side front. Looks like the headlight is on the floorboard, and maybe a reservoir for like washer fluid,
Okay.
something of that nature. And then some snow.
And some snow. Can you point out where the snow is?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. And that headlight, the reservoir, the snow, all of those were there when you saw the car in that garage bay, correct?
Yes, sir.
None of those were placed there by officers to your knowledge.
Not to my knowledge.
Let me ask you, with regards to some of the other evidence that you looked at and collected on this particular item, this particular car, separate from the toothbrush, were there also a series of swabs that you took in the trunk?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And how many of those swabs did you take?
4?
4?
Yes, sir.
And how were those labeled? Your initials again?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And it was just 1, 2, 3, 4? Or?
Yes, sir. JMT 1, 2, 3, and 4.
4. Okay. Those particular swabs, could you go ahead and describe for the jury how you collected swabs? You talked about it a moment ago when you showed us how instinctually you use 2 gloves. When you do these swabs in the trunk, how do you collect those?
So for swabs, when it comes to blood, if it's not wet, so if the blood's not wet or the material's not wet, urine, whatever it is, if it's dry, we have sterile water. We take it, we pour it into the cap. Each cotton swab contains 2 in the package, the container. So you glove up. Usually, I would write all the details on the box. There was a little cotton swab box. So I'd write, it's folded, you assemble it, so it's easier to write on it before. So you'd write JMT1, set it up, date, time, all the information, put on your gloves, do the water, get everything ready. And then at that time, because we were using Blue Star in the trunk, there was kind of like a limited amount of time because you have to have the lights off to see the area that you're going to collect. So you'd spray the Blue Star, it would illuminate, you could see that area, and then you had to turn the lights on and collect it. So I was there waiting, ready with the swab ready to go.
I see. So to make sure I understand this right, you're not necessarily administering the Blue Star, but you've got the swabs
Yes.
that you've opened up. Are each one of these swabs, the water that you put together, the boxes, are each one of those sterile before you open them to take a swab?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And is that also very important for you for taking a swab, to double glove and to make sure you're using sterile materials?
Yes, sir.
Those 4 swabs and the toothbrush, are you aware whether or not those were sent on to a laboratory for examination?
I believe the toothbrush was,
Okay.
but I wasn't aware at the time. I assumed everything that we were doing was going to end up at a lab.
If I can have just a moment, please, Your Honor. Mr. Tucker, I've got one last question I want to ask you. The trunk liner itself, with regards to the 4 swabs that were taken, did you also collect, I believe you said at the very beginning, there were 8 evidence items that you took. Could you please tell us what JMT 8 was? What was the last thing that you cut out?
I don't remember.
Okay. If you had a chance to look at a report written from the search that day, do you think that might refresh your recollection as to what the 8th item was?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Tucker, I'm going to go ahead and hand you a copy of what's been, just a bait stamp, page 111. I'm going to direct your attention down at the,
I'm going to need you to raise your voice so everybody can hear you, please.
apologize. Mr. Tucker, I'm going to go ahead and hand you what's been marked Discovery page 111, and I'm going to direct your attention down to the bottom of the page. First of all, after having a chance to read through that document, I'm going to ask, is that a write-up of what the search was that you were a part of for these photographs and for your taking of evidence?
Yes, sir.
And I'm going to have, my question for you is going to be, what was the 8th and last thing that you collected? I'm going to have you said you didn't remember. I'm going to let you go ahead and refresh your recollection. If it's refreshed, let me know. Just look up when you're done.
Yes, sir. It was part of. Oh,
I'll take that back.
Yes,
All
sir.
set.
Sorry.
That's all right. And do you recall now what JMT 8 was, that last thing that you collected?
yes, sir.
What was it?
A piece of the trunk liner.
Piece of the trunk liner?
Yes, sir.
So, And how did you get or recover that piece of the truck liner?
We cut it?
You cut it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What did you use to cut it?
I don't remember.
All right. And then after it was cut, first of all, you have shown us what you do with gloves and try to present and collect things in a sterile manner. Would you have done that for trying to collect what JMT8 was, the cutting of the trunk liner?
Yes, sir.
And would you have logged it into evidence the same way you did the other ones, JMT 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8?
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Tucker, I don't have any further questions for you. I believe defense counsel will have a few.
Yes, sir.
Good morning, Detective. I don't believe we've met, but I'm Jamie Brooks with Public Defender, and I represent Mr. Montgomery. I'm also going to ask you some questions about that search you conducted with then Detective, now Sergeant O'Leary. Do you
Yes, sir.
understand?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and this search was on January 1st. Your participation in the search was on January 1st, 2022.
Yes, sir.
And it was the Chrysler Sebring, right?
Yes, sir.
And it was already in the Manchester Police Department bay when you saw it.
Yes, sir.
The pictures that were shown showed what were like the guts or the parts of the vehicle inside, right?
Yes, sir.
But eventually, those items were all removed from the interior of the vehicle.
I think so. It wasn't by me.
You mentioned there being, I don't think you used the word butcher paper, but there was paper that O'Leary put down, correct?
I don't know if it was O'Leary, but there was paper down. Yes, sir.
Okay. And the purpose of the paper being down was to put the parts of the car that were in the interior on the ground.
Yes, sir.
Because not only were you looking for items such as toothbrushes, but you were also looking for latent blood stains, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you mentioned Blue Star. Blue Star is a latent blood stain reagent.
Yes. Yes.
It reacts with hemoglobin.
Yes.
It can detect the presence of blood that cannot be seen by the naked eye.
Correct.
It can detect blood that has been cleaned up.
Yes, sir.
It can detect minute amounts.
Yes, sir.
And Blue Star was applied to the entirety of the exterior of the vehicle.
That I don't know. I wasn't there for that.
You weren't there for that?
No, sir.
Were you there for but you were there for the collection of swabs, right?
For the trunk, sir.
Just for the trunk?
Yes, sir.
All the same, you were there for when the Blue Star was applied to the exterior of the vehicle.
I don't remember that. I remember the trunk.
So, okay. Are you aware of Blue Star being applied to the exterior of the vehicle?
Not that I can remember.
And what about the interior of the vehicle?
The trunk, yeah.
The state just had you look at a report,
Yes, sir.
correct? And that's from the state's discovery,
Yes, sir.
bait stamp 111 through 114, state's discovery?
If you say so.
Do you still have that report up there, Detective?
No, sir.
If I may. Permission to approach?
Yes?
Thank you. Do you recognize this document, Detective?
I do, yes.
And you indicated you could not recall the extent of the use of Blue Star to the vehicle,
I remember the trunk, sir.
but you don't remember any other portions?
No.
Would it help you to look at that report?
Yes, but this isn't my report.
This is the same report that the state just provided you to refresh your recollection?
Right, but this report was written by Brian O'Leary. So he documented the items that I found.
Okay. Okay. Do you have any specific recollection of your participation on January 1st of 2022?
Yeah, I remember going down. I remember helping Brian Blue Star the trunk. I remember helping collect the samples. I remember collecting the items from the trunk. That's. I don't remember doing much more than that for the vehicle.
So for you, you believe it was just the trunk?
Yes, sir. For the most part, yeah.
Well, while we're at it, let's go ahead and talk about the trunk then. So Blue Star emits a reaction to the hemoglobin, right, by chemiluminescence.
Right. It's like a neon green looking color, like neon green, neon blue.
Some people say blue,
Yeah.
light blue.
Right.
And your role in this was to make sure that the lighting was correct.
Yes, sir.
So it doesn't have to be pitch black for Blue Star to work, right?
No, but you want darkness for the camera.
You want dim light.
Right.
And was part of your role to make sure that the camera was functioning?
Nope. Nope. Detective O'Leary set that camera up on the tripod and had all the settings. You have to use specific settings, like shutter length that it's open for type of thing.
And you were just ready with the swabs.
Yes. And then like
And what you were waiting for was to see a reaction, right?
correct.
And it would manifest itself with a light blue color.
Right.
It's a light blue color that would last for roughly 30 to 60 seconds.
Yeah, it's not very long.
But that 30 to 60 second reaction would suggest the presence of blood.
Yes, sir.
Blood that the naked eye cannot see,
Correct.
blood that could have been cleaned up.
Correct.
So when there was that reaction, you would take those swabs, right, and get samples
Right.
from that area that was illuminated.
Correct.
And you mentioned two swabs. One swab would be used to later provide to the State Forensic Laboratory.
Right.
The second swab you would use for a hemostick, right?
It depends. I think the second swab's in this case. I just used it for the next sample.
Okay. Let's talk about swabs you collected. JMT1, would that be something that you collected?
Yes.
And what was that? Do you recall?
No.
Would it help you to look at something to be able to recall that?
The report, yes.
Feel free to do so and just look up when you're done.
Yes, sir.
So JMT1, what is that?
So you want me to describe what's in the report?
From your recollection, if you like, or I can just ask you questions about it at this point. It was a DNA swab that you took, right?
Right.
And it was a swab of an area that was positive for Blue Star, correct?
Right.
And it was by a piece of insulation.
I can't remember. I remember the trunk, and I remember we sprayed the Blue Star, lights went off. You see the areas that reacted, and then we took a photograph, and then we would look at the photograph after and compare, and then take the sample from that area.
So a swab was used to tame a sample, and was hemosticks also used on JMT1?
I don't recall that.
Fair to say, though, that the process, this isn't the first time that you've been involved in the Blue Star collection process.
It might be. There's one other time that I know of.
Okay.
That was over on Guilford Ave. I just don't remember if this happened before that.
But in terms of your recollection of the protocol or the proper procedure, if there were any reaction, positive reaction to the Blue Star, a sample would be collected, right?
Right.
So JMT1 reflected a swab from an area of the trunk that tested positive for hemoglobin. Let's talk about JMT2. Do you recall what that is?
From reading the report, it says in a trunk by a candy wrapper.
And this was a swab you took because the item tested positive, reacted positively to the Blue Star mist.
Right.
JMT4, that's also a swab that you took?
Yes, sir.
And this was also due to a reaction to the application of Blue Star in the trunk?
Yes, sir.
This was in a bumper crease area by the rubber gasket?
I don't remember.
You talked about this on direct, JMT8. Do you remember again what that was from?
I remember the carpet, the trunk liner. I don't remember what part tested positive.
Do you know if it was the top or the bottom?
I don't, sir.
But in any event, because that area tested positive, and it was probably something you couldn't really swab,
Right.
so because you couldn't swab it, you still wanted to make sure that you collected it,
Yes, sir.
and that's why you cut out a portion of it,
Right.
the portion that tested positive.
Yes, sir.
So again, your understanding of the procedure is that if something tests positive for Blue Star, it's documented, right, in the form of the camera that's taking pictures.
Yes, sir.
It's also documented by the collection of a sample from that area, right,
Yes, sir.
in the form of a swab.
Right. Yes, sir.
It's also documented in a police report,
Yes, sir.
a police report that oftentimes ends up in discovery, like this one, right?
Yes, sir.
Like the report that you're looking at from Detective O'Leary.
Yes, sir.
So, Detective, I'm just trying to figure out why you only remember the trunk. Is it because that was the only area where there was the positive reaction for Blue Star on the vehicle?
No, I think that's just the only area that I helped with.
And to the best of your recollection, you don't know how many days of processing the Sebring took?
No, sir.
You were just there for one day,
Yes, sir.
and that would be January 1st,
Right.
2022.
I was in and out a lot, sir, but the day in question, yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Anything further?
Briefly, Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
Let me ask you, Mr. Junker, you did not spray the Blue Star in this particular case, correct?
No, sir.
And you were asked about training and experience with Blue Star. How many times had you applied Blue Star in the past at different crime scenes to try to discover evidence?
I can't remember if Guilford Ave happened before. I sprayed some there. A lot of the reason why I think I was involved in this was to learn that process, to see Detective O'Leary do it and assist him with it.
So at the time that you're assisting with this process, how much did you know about Blue Star? You were asked a lot of questions about protocols and procedures and chemoluminescence. Did you know about all of that at the time that you were assisting?
I was given very, very simple instructions that it'll glow and that there is a potential that they could be blood.
Have you ever mixed up the reagents to use at a crime scene?
No.
Have you ever read the directions that are necessary before you mix up those reagents?
No.
With regards to Blue Star, what it's good for and not good for, are you aware, or do you know whether it can cause a false negative or a false positive response?
I was told it can react with rust.
And it can react with rust?
Yes, sir.
Do you still have the photos?
Yes, sir.
Just a quick question. I'll just take State's Exhibit 104. That's State's Exhibit 104 with the registration. Am I reading that that correctly?
I think it's 103.
So, excuse me, 103. Let's get 103. Could you find 104, please? 104?
Yes, sir.
So you think that it might react with rust?
Yes, sir.
And the swabs that are taken, again, where do those swabs go?
I put them into the cardboard container, the swab container,
And what was your understanding of where they would be sent?
the state lab.
State lab. All right. Thank you. No further questions.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Tuck.
This may have been one of the very few occasions that you were involved with the Blue Star application process, yet you still understood that the goal was to over-collect, correct, and not under-collect?
Right. Yes, sir.
So if there was any kind of a reaction, you made sure that was your job there, was to collect it, right?
Right.
So that it could later be determined if it was a true positive, if it was the result of interaction with blood, or from something else, correct?
Yes, sir.
And when you were there, whatever your participation was, you made sure that you were collecting anything that reacted to the application of the spray.
Right. Not every. There were some areas that were very, very, very faint. That when Detective O'Leary and I looked at it, we said that clearly was like a rust seam or something of that nature. So we didn't collect those. But anything else, yes.
And Detective O'Leary, to your knowledge, was very familiar with the application of Blue Star.
Objection, Your Honor, being on the scope. Correct.
I'll rephrase. You indicated that you had only, this was your first or maybe second time,
Yes, sir.
and that was part of the reason why you were there, right?
Yes, sir.
Was to learn from somebody who did know about the application of Blue Star.
Correct.
Nothing further.
Nothing additional, Your Honor. We'd ask this witness to be excused, please.
Any objection?
No objection.
All right, you may step down, you are
Ma'am.
excused.